All right, welcome back, guys. So I've decided today I'm going to do a workflow video. I want to take you through and show you how I go about editing one of my images and show you just my process using Lightroom and Photoshop just to bring my images to life. So yeah, it's something I get questions about quite a bit. And yeah, I just thought it would be worthwhile now that I've got a YouTube channel just to show you how I actually go about editing some of my images. So today I've chosen an image that I shot this autumn. So it's got a bit of color, but also it's quite atmospheric. So there's some fog in the scene, and that's always a bit of a challenge for people that don't shoot in those sorts of conditions that much. So I thought it'd be quite valuable to go through this particular image and just show you basically my workflow, but also get some tips about how you can edit and bring to life a shot with fog that's quite atmospheric. So let's jump on the computer, have a look, and I'll walk you through it. All right, so this is the raw file I've got here. So I'm just in Lightroom. Whether you use Adobe Camera Raw or Lightroom, the workflow is pretty much the same. Everything in Lightroom is basically in Adobe Camera Raw these days, so you can follow along either way. So I'll just walk you through my process of what I think about when I'm looking to edit an image. First off, what I do is I try and get a bit of an idea as to what kind of image I'm going for. So is it going to be a bright image? Is it going to be dark and moody? So I always want to have a bit of an idea as to the feel behind the image. And a lot of that comes from the conditions that I was shooting in. And trying to accentuate that. So this particular scene, it was a cold autumn morning. It's got a bit of a yellow tinge to it just due to the, I guess the white balance setting that it was on at the time. But yeah, looking at this image, it's something that I want to brighten up quite a bit and give it a light, kind of airy feel, but also a bit of a cooler kind of feel to it as well. I want to add that kind of feeling of being out in the cold and being in autumn, early autumn, cold mornings in the high country. I want to maintain that feel and get that across to the viewer. So going for more of a cooler scene rather than a warmer scene will help get that feeling across. So once I've got an idea of the type of image I'm looking for, then I'll just start working with some of the sliders in Lightroom just to get it to a base stage before I start actually applying some contrast and color and those sorts of things. So I always just start in the basic panel, just here, and I just try and really brighten it up a bit. If it's a bit dark, depending on the histogram, I'm always looking at this histogram as well. So I work with the histogram both in camera, always checking that to make sure I'm not clipping any highlights or losing anything in the shadow area. So I always want to make sure I'm looking at this, always have it open and see how much room I've got to play with. So looking at this, it's a lot of just mid-tones. There's no real harsh blacks or whites, so I can really open that up quite a bit. So let's go ahead and do that. I've got quite a bit of room to play with, but let's not go too crazy. Just so I can see the feel of the image, and a lot of this is just, I don't have set techniques or set specific movements with sliders. A lot of it's just, a bit of going by feel and what I think as I move a slider slowly across. So this I've opened it up, and that's what I always try and do, just get it to a brightness point where I can see every part of the image, and that's where I'll start then looking at the temperature slider. So let's have a look. I'll just move this over, go for a bit of a cool image. So the temperature slider, really, by playing around with this, you can really get a pretty good sense as to the feel of the scene. whether it was a warmish kind of atmosphere or feel to the day, or a bit of a coolish. So you can really control that feel there just with that temperature slider. So yeah, I'll go with something a bit cooler. Usually I'll want to go relatively neutral, so I'll just move this slider, you know, a bit left and right to try and get a neutral feel. If I want to go a bit cooler, you know, I'll go a little bit over to the left, or if I want to go a bit warmer, I'll go a little bit to the right. But yeah, just try and go a bit neutral. The other option you can do, that I used to do in the beginning, was just click on this slider. So I'll just reset these here. You can click on that, the temperature picker, go for the whitest part of the scene and click it, and it will give you what the you know, the white balance should be based on all the colors in the image. But as you can see, it hasn't really given me the look and feel that I want, so I'll reset that and then just go back, just try and get the coolness there in the image. So yeah, I don't usually play with the tint too much. Sometimes if I see there's a bit too much kind of magenta in it, I might move the green, move it over a bit to the green side a bit, but usually I don't touch it. So I'll just leave it for now. So yeah, so I've got a nice coolish feel to the scene. And then yeah, I'll just go work my way down. I'll just go back and just look at this, so the profiles. I don't usually touch these too much. I don't play with them that much. They just provide different starting points, but mine's just set on Adobe Color and I usually just stay with that. Some people like to play around with them, but I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so yeah, just getting the image to where I kind of want it. I usually just stay around all of these sliders just here, work with that. There's not much really that needs to be done. Might bring down the shadows a little bit. Texture clarity, I don't usually play with that unless I'm processing like a more intimate scene and want to bring out some of the nice details in like a kind of macro / intimate scene. Vibrance and saturation, I don't usually play with too much. With all these tabs here, the only one I'd probably suggest clicking on is just the remove chromatic aberration and enable profile settings, or corrections, sorry, enable profile corrections. And that just brings through your camera lens and makes any adjustments for vignetting, that sort of thing. So I usually do that probably at the start. I'm just working off my laptop, but on my main computer, I'll have that stored in a default. So whenever I import any images, that will just go straight on to every single raw file. All right, so before I start doing anything, I really want to look at what are the things that are distracting me with this image. And the main things for me is this bottom area and the top area. I do like this fog that's kind of sweeping across these trees, but I feel that those areas are a little distracting. So I could either use the crop tool to kind of crop them out. So I could go for like a 16:9 crop, try and crop them out a bit, like that. Now the other option that you could use, and this is a little first technique that I can show you, is where you've got fog, you can actually use the fog within the scene and create or add to the fog or detract it. So what I might want to do is actually add a bit of fog up there and a bit at the bottom, just to kind of balance out the scene. So what I would use is I'd click on a mask tool up here and then go to linear gradient. So just like a straight gradient line. Click and pull down just a little bit over the top of the fog. And then I'd go down and put in or add in a little dehaze. So if you just see, I'll just bring that slider to the left, just slowly. See there? Let's just add it in, quite a bit of fog up there. And then what I'd do is just add the same thing at the bottom. Again, just go over that line, the fence line, and then just add in some dehaze. And there we go. And if you look at before, after already, that's the difference that I've made there. I'll show you without. So if we look at before and after using those masks. So that was before, that's after. So it's basically just evened out the scene, and it really makes those trees the center focus of the scene. And that's what I was going for. I did like that tree line up there, but I just felt it was pulling my eye a bit up towards the trees and taking my eye away from the main subject, which is this collection of trees here. So always think about what your main subject is, where you want the eye to go, and anything that might be a distracting element within the scene. Try and remove that if you can in camera, but if not, you can try and do that in processing. So via like cropping out, or you know, other techniques that can work, such as adding a bit of dehaze for this scene. So getting used to your camera and knowing what you can do in processing can really help out in the field, because then you can know that you can do that later on in processing. Just get the scene and then apply that later on. All right, so if we look at what we've done so far, just a few basic adjustments. Look at before and after. Before, after. So yeah, it really brightened it up, brought it to like quite a neutral kind of color, and just give it a bit more of a lighter feel to the image, and also cooled it down. So yeah, so what I've done there, I've gotten to a point where I might want to start bringing more attention now to the trees. So what I could do here is add another mask and just get a brush tool and just paint over the trees. And for the purpose of this video, just kind of brushing over the area, not really. If I was doing this at home on my bigger computer, and I'd probably usually take my time and maybe zoom in a bit more. But yeah, for the purposes of this tutorial and the time, I'll just show you what you can do. But yeah, I would probably just zoom in and probably just add it, make it a bit more refined, what I'm trying to say. So yeah, so I've basically selected those trees there. And then what I'd do is, yeah, just try and bring them out a little bit more. So what sliders would do that? So let's firstly, because they're probably sitting behind, or they are sitting behind a bit of fog, let's kind of bring them out by using the dehaze slider again, but go the opposite way. So see how that kind of brings in a bit more contrast and texture. Could brighten them up a bit of contrast. Whites, bring them out. Blacks. You can also play with the temperature if you want to warm them up a bit to give them a bit more of a yellowy feel. You could do that. That's quite nice. And even just to get a bit of color, a bit more color, add a bit of saturation in there too. And that's just managed to bring them out just a little bit more. Maybe pull that back a little bit. Maybe add a bit of clarity. There you go, see the difference there? It really kind of texture, just makes them pop a bit more. That might be a bit much. And I'm just looking, constantly just looking, going back and forth and just seeing, it felt like that was a bit too warm, so I'm going to bring that back a bit. So yeah, now let's have a look, on and off. So yeah, really brought them out to the forefront, made them stand out quite a bit. And that's what, you know, I wanted to do. I wanted to really make them the hero of the scene. Let's just zoom in. Let's have a look. What do we have there? Yep, it's looking quite nice. Let's just have a look at the mask. Off, on, off, on. See, I probably could have done a bit more there, but I was more just trying to get the color. I would usually probably just take the mask down, or let's just try it. Just add in there, see? Just bring that out a bit more. Just paint around them, the trees. Just make sure you're capturing all that. And this stuff here is probably, yeah, you could refine that a bit, just a bit better. And just, yeah, just go around the image and have a look. You might want to fill that bit in there, or you might just want to leave it. Yeah. All right. So it's looking quite nice. It might be, you know, you go back and forth and have a look, and you might feel it might be a bit much. So what can I do? I might have added, it might be a bit too dark. So you might want to bring the dehaze just down a bit and bring that back. Just always going back and forth, looking over your image. Can really help figure out which way you want to take it. All right, so I've got it to a pretty good point now, I think. And what I want to do is I want to now crop it in and just bring the eye in. I feel like there's too much, not negative space, but nothing interesting happening up here, so I could bring that down. So I think a 16:9 crop would work quite nicely. Bring that there, bring it in a bit. And got nice balance either side. You got, you know, your middle part here, the left third, right third are well balanced. Top and bottom works quite nicely. So let's have a look. Perfect. And I think that works quite nicely. You got enough room, breathing space around the edge. I don't mind this. This works quite nice in there as well. Just adds to the character of the scene. So yeah, I think that's at a good place, a good point. And yeah, what I would do now is then just make some more minor adjustments, so more localized adjustments. And what I would usually do is then take that into Photoshop and use something called luminosity mask just to refine the adjustments that I want to make. Perhaps some contrast adjustments or color adjustments, just to refine it. So basically what I do is I use Lightroom to do most of what is called global adjustments, where you're affecting the entire part of the scene. And I might even do some local adjustments as well, where I feel like the masking tools within Lightroom are good enough just to do the job there. But for real refined adjustments. I use Photoshop just to use things like luminosity masks, which I might go into more detail on a later video. But yeah, that's generally what I'll use Lightroom and then Photoshop for between the two. And also using Photoshop for removing certain things that I might find that are distracting, like this little fence line down here. I might want to get rid of those little pickets there. So yeah, so let's have a look. I'll take it into Photoshop and then yeah, just see what we can do in there in terms of just enhancing the image a little bit more. So I'll go right click, I'll go right click on the image and go to edit in Adobe Photoshop. All right, so I've got our image here, and I might do a video on some more basic steps of using Photoshop, but I'll try and keep it as simple as possible. But I've got my layer just here. So what I will do is I'll look to try and enhance the contrast just a little bit more within these trees and perhaps the color. So what I want to use is what's called a luminosity mask. And this is a panel that I've actually purchased called TK panels, luminosity masks. There's a number of different ones out there that you can use. This was just the one that I felt worked well at the time, and I had seen a few videos on YouTube that people were using it, but there's a number of different ones that you can use that do basically the same thing. So what the luminosity masks do is they basically will select a certain part of the image based on the tonal values of the entire scene. So if I wanted to select basically just the cloud section or the fog, I might select a light. So you have within your selection of numbers, you've got a range of light masks, and that will be will select your brightest parts of the scene. And as you go further down the numbers, it will select less and less of the brightest part of the scene. So if I go to say the fourth one, these parts that are revealed in the white are the widest parts of the scene. If you look at the other side, you've got your darks. So a darks 1 will select all the dark parts in the scene, and the whitest parts are where all the dark tones are in the image, and the grey parts are the less dark parts in the image. And as I go further down again, it's just selecting more and more and focusing in more and more on the widest parts of the scene. And then you have your mid-tones as well, so that's the ones down the bottom, 3, 2 and 1 mids. So I won't go into it in too much detail, I'll just show you how I use it, just to make a selection basically, and target a certain area to make an adjustment to that part of the image. So let's look at a darks 2. It's mostly selecting the trees, which I want. And then what I'll do is I'll go down to this button here that has the 3 lines and select an adjustment layer. So I might go to a levels adjustment layer, and then yeah, just make a slight adjustment here. So I'm just pulling down the midtones. These sliders here are your midtones in the middle, your whites and your blacks, and then I'll just play around with them to try and get a nice adjustment. Then you can click on and off and just show there. What else might I do? I might just try and adjust the color in the scene, the overall color. It feels like it is getting a little bit blue. So I might just go to a hue saturation layer, I'll try my cyans, bring that down. That pulls out, if you have a look there, it's pulling out a lot of that kind of bluey green in the trees. So I don't mind that. It's making them look a bit more natural. And then I'll go to my blues, bring down the saturation, make it more of like a white whitish scene, like whitish fog. I think that works quite nice. Let's have a look and just try and bring up some of the darker parts of the scene. So I might go to a curves layer. Just feel like it's getting a bit too contrasty. For a scene like this, you know, it's not going to be strong contrast because you're in a scene where you're in an environment where there's lots of fog, so you still want to maintain a relatively softish kind of feel to the scene. So yeah, I think it's getting to a point that I'm quite happy with, and what I would usually do when I'm editing for myself, I would probably get to a point where it's about 90% done and then walk away from it and come back the next day and then re-look at it with fresh eyes. And I found that has been something that has really taken my image from a point where I'm, you know, sort of happy with it to, you know, really refining and getting it to the point that I envisioned from the start. Sometimes you really do need fresh eyes looking over an image, and when you're constantly looking at it, sitting there editing for, you know, half an hour, 45 minutes, sometimes you can't see certain things because your eyes are adjusting to certain colors and certain contrasts, and you need to walk away from it and come back with fresh eyes and see that, oh, maybe that's a bit too cool or a bit too warm or a bit too dark or whatever the case may be. So I found that really helps. All right, so let's just attack these little pickets down here. So what I would use is just this remove tool that's already selected and just go in and just brush over them like that, and it will just get rid of them. This is a new tool that's come in the recent Photoshop update. It uses AI technology to look around the rest of the scene or close to the scene and try and mimic the rest of the scene by removing the thing that you're brushing over. It's quite a good tool. Before that I was using the spot healing brush, but the remove tool seems to be working a lot better, probably because of the AI part of it. All right, there we go. That's done a pretty good job of getting rid of that. So yeah, I reckon the scene's probably at a point where I'm quite happy with it. What I would do is, yeah, like I said, probably walk away from it now, come back and see if there's anything else. But it's really gotten to a point where I'm quite happy with, you know, the final result and where it's at. It's basically managed to allow me to bring out the trees, make them the hero part of the scene, and remove the distracting bottom and top parts of the image. So yeah, you know, again, I might come back and then go, oh, it might be a little too warm or not. I'd like a bit more blue in it, so I might go back and try and add that back in. And what I might do is I might take that just back into, open that up in Camera Raw, and then to add a bit of coolness to it, what I would usually do is probably just, I like to, when I'm trying to move from a white or add a bit of a coolness or warmness to the scene, I like to have like a white layer, white background, just so I can really see the color against white and what the hue is, what the color shift is, and where it's kind of in line with a neutral white background. So yeah, so I might just go temperature and just try and add the coolness to it, and just there, -3. I think that's quite nice. Quite happy with that. Go okay. And yeah, I think that's quite nice. I'm quite happy with it. So what I would do, just to have a look, so I'll just save that, and that should send that back into Lightroom, so I can do a bit of a before and after. So that's before, and that's after. So it's really gotten to a point that I've managed to achieve, you know, what I set out to do, make it brighter, make the trees the hero, and remove any distracting elements. All right, so I think I'll wrap that up. I'm quite happy with that finished result, and I hope you got something out of that, just showing you how I go about my workflow, what things I use. I try and keep it as simple as possible, not overcomplicate it. Knowing your programs and what you can do can be, when you get to that point, it's really helpful because you can just go in, edit, know what kind of look and feel you want, and then just apply what you need. When I first started out, I just really didn't have any direction. I was just editing things, just doing the same things, and it just wasn't getting the results that I wanted because I don't think I knew, one, what I was looking for in the scene, and two, I just didn't understand the program enough and its capabilities and what I needed to do. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a few tricks and tips on how to edit scenes with conditions similar to this, with the fog and also the autumn color, and how to bring out those colors and accentuate the fog. And yeah, I might do a few more of these different images that I feel that you might get a bit of value out of, just different scenes with different conditions perhaps, and yeah, see where that goes. All right, I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.